let's take a look at the next part, section number 5. All I'm going to do in this section is section number 5, but next is the earnest money. The earnest money is money that is showing that your buyer is very serious about buying this house. And so we're going to put down some earnest money, and most people expect it. Now, this isn't absolutely necessary to put earnest money down, but I've never seen a transaction without earnest money. So most people, what they ask for during the earnest money phase is they ask for about 1%. So if you remember, we're buying this house for $200,000. So we can actually probably drop this down to $2,000. If I'm representing the buyer in this situation, which I am, I'm going to try and keep my earnest money as low as possible, just in case for whatever reason something goes wrong. The most that they could lose in this transaction would be $2,000. If I'm on the seller side, I'm going to try and get as much earnest money as I can to make sure that they are very, very serious about this, and I'm not just pulling my house off the market for no reason. This is a very powerful tool also if you know you're in a multiple offer situation. So if I happen to know that this, since I'm representing the buyer here, and if I happen to know that there was 5 other contracts coming in because I spoke to the realtor, this is a great way to say, hey, look, I'm super serious. Maybe I go ahead and bump this whole thing up all the way to the $20,000, saying I'll put half of my cash portion down. It all kind of depends on how you want to play that game. Now, next is you're going to say we're going to drop off this $20,000 and we're going to drop it off with an escrow agent. 9 times out of 10, that escrow agent will be the title company because they're going to act as the intermediary between us, both parties in the transaction. They are the escrow. And all the word escrow means, guys, is it just means a separate party. It just means it's outside of the transaction. So this is an escrow officer that I use a lot, Ryan Hopkins out of Seguin. So I'm saying right here is like I'm going to put, now in this particular transaction, I'm just going to put $2,000. And the reason why is my buyer wants to tie this house up, but also wants to look at one more. So we're going to try and keep this down as much as we can, but he wants to make sure that he's got a chance at this house if everything else falls through. So I'm going to put $2,000 with Ryan Hopkins, and here's where his office is, so that way everybody knows. Now this next section, typically you leave blank, but you can put some stuff in here. The buyer shall deliver an additional earnest money of, you can add extra money within 5 days or 10 days of the effective date of the contract. Everything, I know these blue lines are all optional. I mean, they're all negotiable, so whatever you want to do with it, you can. So this one is really, really important that you put this down, and you need to let your buyer know that they have 3 days from the effective date of the contract, okay, to put this earnest money in Ryan Hopkins' hands. What does that mean? 3 business days, guys, you got to get it over there, and the effective date of the contract is when both parties sign and it becomes executed. So if you can see right here, it is called the effective date. So when my client signed and when the seller signs, then as soon as both people signed, that is the effective date. So after that, we've only got 3 days to get $2,000 in Ryan Hopkins' hands, and time is of the essence for this paragraph. This is no joking matter. If you do not do that in 3 days, this contract is null and void, and then there can be all kinds of legal ramifications. Most of the time I've never seen anybody really get into it, but you can be sued for specific performance, we can be sued for breach of contract. There's a lot of things that can go in there, and you don't want to mess with that. So make sure, what I always tell everybody is when you sign the contract, you hand me the check or we're going to get it over to Ryan. It's not something you want to put in the mail because it's going to get lost. You need to make sure we're handing these things over. And before I go, there's one last thing I want to say about the earnest money section of this. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to make it out to the escrow agent in particular. You can. Sometimes this is a lawyer, and the lawyer functions as the escrow agent. I've seen that. Sometimes you do make it out to the lawyer. Sometimes you make it out to the lawyer's LLC. For instance, Ryan Hopkins, though, works for 5 Star Title, so the check will probably be made out to 5 Star Title. You're going to want to make sure that you ask that question before you get into it because, again, you've only got 3 days to get it right. You might want to make sure you talk to him beforehand. And lastly is you want to make sure that you find acceptable funds to the escrow agent. Some of them are fine with personal checks in the amount of $2,000. Some of them are not okay with that. Sometimes you need to go and get a money order or a cashier's check or something else that is considered acceptable funds. And I will say this, very, very, very seldomly have I ever heard of anybody accepting cash as an acceptable fund. And I will tell you right now, whatever you do, do not accept cash from your clients. Cash is not trackable. So here at Whiteline, we don't like messing with cash. As a matter of fact, we tell you you cannot accept cash from your people. So make sure you find acceptable funds. It could be a personal check, money order, cashier's check, however you want to go about doing that.